Greetings, everyone. My camera froze for a second. That was weird. We'll give everybody a minute to jump on board. I just saw the first question for tonight. It's cracking me up. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you're not already. I'm guessing most of you that jumped on so quickly are already subscribed. All right, I'll get going. If you missed something, always jump back. You can rewatch later. The first question, and I'll do the same thing where I alternate between the chat and the questions from JOL. We'll start in JOL. And the first question is, if Buster Faulkner personally went to every poster's house, told them to their face he's not taking the Kentucky offensive coordinator job, how many people would argue with him? I'd say quite a few. I think people tend to not believe what someone says if it doesn't align with their views on whatever the thing is that's going on. So, like, people had it in their heads that this was going to happen, that he was going to be poached this cycle. And so lots of different people came to me with, like, different scenarios every time a job opened, whatever, and threw his name out. And I generally explained why they wouldn't make sense. And when you pass on like a Notre Dame or some other Arkansas, like opportunities like that, as nice of a job as Kentucky maybe, I'm trying not to be insulting to Kentucky fans because I cover Georgia Tech, where I'm not in a position to be condescending to another fan base right now in football, but that's not enough of a move up, man. Like, especially if you're not interested in like a Notre Dame job. So, and Buster's got a plan, and he's sticking with his plan, and I've been pretty clear about that. Next question from JOL is, do you think the spring game will be similar to last year's game? Yeah, I think it'll be like a little bit of practice and a little bit of simulated scrimmage situations, QB's not live, that kind of thing. They'll probably throw some razzle dazzle in. I'm sure that they'll want to let the two freshman quarterbacks play the second half of the scrimmage as much as possible. So I think you'll see, Haynes and Zach for maybe the first half of the scrimmage, and then you'll see Aaron Philo and Graham Knowles play the rest of the way, and Brody Rhodes and Aiden Simo and whoever else is on the team as walk-on quarterbacks will get a taste as well. But I think it's going to be about showcasing some of these younger guys, getting a chance to see what they're doing, and then being very vanilla on defense because they have a new defensive coordinator. They're not going to want to tip any kind of hand to Florida State on what they're doing. Why are Kentucky fans delusional? Kentucky fans had some success in football and now believe that transfers over from their basketball pedigree, transfers over into other sports. And I noticed it as someone who covered Kentucky games pretty regularly when I was covering the SEC and covering UGA down the road. Their fans were usually pretty chill about, because they kind of didn't have a lot of expectations, and they even won a few games there. And I was at one of the weirdest upsets they had in that weird period where they beat Georgia in 2006, and then their fans failed to tear the goalpost down correctly on the field, and it was like 30 degrees out. It was a miserable day in what's now Kroger Field, I think, Commonwealth Stadium or whatever it was called back then. And it was like the only time I've ever seen a school fail to tear down goalposts. And that always reminds me of the story with the LSU game where they tore down the goalpost and they lost the game, which is also an amazing story. So I'll jump in here and take some from the chat real quick. What are 3 things you're looking for in spring practice? I would say the big things to me: developing depth on the offensive line, finding some playmakers at wide receiver other than the 2 slot guys. Malik Rutherford and Christian Larry were really good, and I think they've got to find some more stuff there, whether it's Leo Blackburn or the freshman or some of the guys returning. Like, they've got to find more production there, more playmaking. Obviously, Eric Singleton was great as the sort of one bright spot in those outside receivers, but you've got to find someone to complement him. So what does that look like? That's one thing. Defensively, most of it's really curiosity with defense. And a little bit on off. I'd say the second thing on offense is the tight end position. A lot of unknowns other than Brett Seither. Guys who haven't played, they lose the three other older guys in the room. Billy Ward, who didn't play much, but was on special teams a lot. And then Luke Benson and obviously Dylan Leonard, who have been the starter for many years, are all moved on. So graduated, ran out of eligibility. So what does that look like now? What do the new tight ends look like? What's that room look like? Do you get something from Jackson Long? Do you get something from anyone else there? Like, that's a big question to me, because those guys were very important to the offense and functioning, and probably a lot more than people give them credit for. And then defensively, I'm just curious about the whole defense, what it looks like, how Tyler Santucci calls things. It's a totally different look than what they were necessarily doing, and just in terms of like what the expectations are, what the coaching styles are. What does all that look like? So that's the other big thing. Let's see. What will the next basketball game we win look like? I mean, they should have beat Louisville if not for basically being a game strangely called inside and a lot of turnovers. And basically no one being able to score the basketball other than Miles Kelly for most of the game. I don't know. They could win Wednesday night. I'm going to go up to Notre Dame. We'll see what happens. Cuse on Saturday is a winnable game. The Clemson game, they've already beat them once. Like, they could win any of these games coming up. It's just like, will they or won't they? That's the thing I don't know. So, we'll see what happens there. Will Lance Terry come back or transfer? I've really wondered about this, and I haven't talked to Lance. I haven't talked to Damon about it because I felt like it was a conversation after the season. My gut is that, like, I think he's got something in mind and is not coming back. But I don't know. Like, I just don't know what. That's a total, like, nothing, like, no insight, and haven't asked anyone about it. None of that stuff. It's more of just like my gut feeling as to why he would shut it down so early, and they clearly could have used him for much of this season, and he would be able to play a pretty significant role in the offense, especially with the struggles we've had scoring the ball. And he's a solid enough defender. I'm really curious what they do with him. I have no idea. So I guess we'll see. Outside of special teams, will Jacob Cruz getting meaningful snaps? That's up to him to earn those. He wasn't ready to play from all indications I got from talking to people around the program on linebacker snaps last year. Special teams, he played quite a bit during the season. He's a guy that was always going to take a year or two to get developed. He played kind of all over the field in high school. He wasn't just a true Mike linebacker or whatever. And the one thing with him I kind of wonder about is, do you maybe try him out at the rush position? Because that's where a lot of teams liked him. Do you play him at tight end? Do you give him something else to do? So very curious about that. How far in the quest for getting all the analysts that we need? That's like an ongoing thing. So the analyst thing all depends on jobs, man. Like, people would rather be a coach on the field 9 times out of 10, unless there's a contractual reason for it, or they're just on the back end of their career. So that's what we're looking at. Did I freeze up again? Unmute myself. I guess I'm having some technical problems on my end. Sorry, guys. That was super weird. Yeah, my camera keeps crashing, but this is a different camera, so it shouldn't be crashing. So that's fine. So my apologies. I was talking about analysts. So analysts, basically, the way that works is usually guys are trying to get a job if they do like where it's a more meaningful coaching job. And then the analyst thing is either based on someone being on the back end of their career, early in their career, trying to work their way up to being on the field, or they're in a situation with maybe a buyout or something where it's advantageous for them financially to not take a position somewhere else, or they just don't want to recruit. So those are the various ways that works. So yeah, those take a little bit longer to fill out sometimes. A Buster style of offense complementary to Santucci's style D. I mean, I think that the fact they can run the football or are willing to run the football is complementary to any defense. It's about sustaining drives. Like Buster's got to be able to do that with his offense, and they've got to be able to score points. That's how they complement the defense, not making it the defense have to pitch a shutout. And conversely, you need the defense to be able to get stops and get off the field, and that's been the problem at times last year. That's why there's Tyler Santucci's a defensive coordinator right now, and not Andrew Thacker or Kevin Shearer, to be totally honest. This is Danny Hall's final year, regardless of the results. Has Teixeira given bad approval to let Ramsey be the coach in waiting? I think all of that stuff went up in the air when J-Bat became the AD, and we'll see what happens. I don't know more than that. That's the way I would put it. I think that's what Russell would tell you. I think with Danny, it's a year-to-year thing right now. We'll see how they do. I really don't know. I mean, what if they play well? Like, what if they go back to Omaha? Like, those are the things that I wonder about. But I kind of my again gut reaction not knowing Danny Hall very well, is that if maybe he had a run in him, that would be enough for him to walk away. But he seems to love it. He loves coaching baseball, so I don't know what's going to happen. Incoming freshman to keep an eye out on. That's an interesting question. I would say all of the guys who are going to play defensive end will have an opportunity to get on the field, and a lot of the defensive backs. So you're looking at the Jordan Boyds of the world, or the kid with the name I can't pronounce from Peachtree City, or Montre Bradford. And then in the secondary, Nehemiah Chandler and Troy Stevenson, Christian Pritchard, and Cedric Franklin, if he can keep himself flying right. Those are all guys that could have an opportunity to be contributors right away. And then Tajay Butler is the one that I really think has a real chance to be a guy that plays immediately significant snaps. I think that was a real steal getting that kid. This is your honest opinion. Where should Georgia Tech be in football and basketball as a program? So it's a relative question to investment and where the decisions made and stuff. And obviously things are not as good as they could have been when you've had a lot of issues with both leadership and coaching hires and both in all the major sports. Basketball should be a perennial NCAA team. Like, they should be what NC State does, right? Like, that's sort of the low bar. In the tournament pretty consistently year to year, some ups and downs. Football is 6-9 wins, like, in being a bowl team every year, and then occasionally having those 10, 11, 12 win seasons mixed in there is the sort of standard bearer. And obviously Brent's expectations are a lot higher than that, but being real, like, this is where you are right now with the amount of commitment you have financially. And then you got to build that back up. So, start there and then you can move expectations up. Look at what Virginia's done in basketball, right? Like, that was, they, had a little bit of a run with Ralph Sampson, and then it was kind of dead. And then Tony Bennett's a really good coach and has done a great job there, and they've become a contender. Like, you can change the way you're viewed that way. So, which of these events are more likely to cause a federal investigation? The potential collapse of the ACC around 2030, P4 private football team unionizes, the Big Ten and SEC attempt to create a super conference and collectively bargain for the lion's share of TV money in the sport, or some other reason. I just wonder how all this works with, like, the amateurism and the connection to college, and this all, everything being just weird. Like, they're trying to attach themselves to school and amateurism and using nonprofits and all of these loopholes to connect to the schools. At what point does it have to break away from the schools because it's something that is nothing to do with college? If you're turning into where you draft guys or whatever, and the thing is, no one wants to watch minor league sports either. So it's like, can you copy the soccer system in Europe? Because that's the only, like, sort of minor league-ish sport that people pay attention to. I don't know. I feel like the sport's going to kill itself if you get into the situation where there's 40 teams and that kills the Vanderbilts, the Mississippi States, the Cincinnatis, the Georgia Techs, and it's just like these quasi NFL teams. Like, does anyone give a crap about that? Are they going to watch that? I kind of doubt it. Like, I think it's going to suck away a lot of the fan base. But everyone's so greedy, and I don't know. And then the other part of it too that I wonder about is, like, no one wants to be on an even playing field. Georgia does not want to be an even playing field with Georgia Tech. Georgia doesn't want to be an even playing field with Alabama. Alabama doesn't want to be an even playing field with Mississippi State. Whatever, go through LSU and Arkansas don't want to be on a level. So how are you going to get everyone to agree to a set of rules or financial things or whatever to make it make sense? So I don't know. That's where I think all of this kind of hits hits the curb is when you have to negotiate that TV deal. How does that work? Like, if you don't have parity, that's what makes all these different leagues generally work, except for Major League Baseball, where you have a lot of haves and have-nots. But most of the leagues are kind of built on, the lower end teams can still win, and you still even see it in baseball from time to time. You'll have the Marlins win or someone that's not one of the highest payrolls. The tweet about going home during the Wake Forest game because of Georgia Tech's effort. Have you made an excuse not to cover a game because you knew it would be unbearable to watch? Yeah. Early on in my career, I did that. When I was single, I did it to like go spend time with the girl I was dating. It was a good time. I skipped a Georgia Tech Duke game for that one, I remember, and looked at the score on my phone and was like, okay, I made the right choice tonight. I've been a few. Not as much in football. I generally have tried to go to every game I can go to in football, just because there's so much fewer. Basketball is a little easier to kind of skip out on one or two. As we round the corner into another spring football practice, what are some things you're going to be looking for that will show that GT is poised to build upon the 7-win season going into 2024? Tougher schedule notwithstanding, as practice wraps up and we head into the summer. Being healthy. That's always my number one thing in all of this. And there are some guys coming off some significant injuries. You have Lee Blackburn. There's a couple other guys that are kind of banged up that's a little more quiet that will be interested to see what their status is come the start of spring, and trying to get those guys healthy but get them prepared for the season. How does the new defensive coaching staff mesh together? Like, what's the chemistry look like there? How quickly are they able to make, tangible changes into performance? Or, to me, like one of the things like that Seth always talks about is like, run fits and with the linebackers, or just a lot of the guys going into the right gaps. Like, those are things that are controllable that are not being controlled well. So like, those are the things that I'm kind of looking at. And the other thing too is with Haynes King, I want to see him graduate through more progressions as he's in the pocket and not being so locked down on one receiver and things like that. So those are the things that I look for. Because the other key to all of this, if you're going to play a tougher schedule, is defensively, I think the bar is pretty low to be a little bit better. But King can change things by cutting down on turnovers and some of his mistakes and getting a little bit more help from the receiver position to make plays, not have Eric Singleton maybe hit a freshman wall like he did a little bit in the back half of the season once he got hurt. Like, all of those things kind of add up, and that can be a margin where you don't, lose the Boston College game or the Bowling Green games or whatever, or come out and lay an egg against Clemson. Like, those are the things that you could get away from and be a more consistent product. How many wins hypothetically would it take for Georgia Tech to make the college football playoff? So we go into the expanded playoff next year. You'd have to win if you won the ACC, and you would need to do it with 10 plus wins. I think if you won it at 9 games, they would. Well, I guess you're in if you win. They have an automatic. So winning the ACC, I'd say 10 plus wins gets you on the bubble. If you were to lose but again, I think that's not realistic for next year. KQ, do you get the impression that J-Back, Cabrera, and others with influence are pissed about the lack of respect Georgia Tech gets in discussions about the future of college athletics, especially football, the Magnificent Seven, etc., or is the perception of Tech different from behind closed doors? I think you are what you are, and everyone understands where you are, and that's part of why they're trying to build this thing up more. I think the perception is better the further you get away from the South, but you still have limitations. You're still not drawing great in football. Basketball team's been a hot mess since 2010, and even before that was kind of skittering. And so you don't have anything to hang your hat on, right? Like, football's been not great really since 2016. So that's 8 years, 9 years of sort of mediocre to bad football. Those things matter, and if you don't draw well, that matters, and the optics of all that matters to a point. So they got some work to do, and it depends on how all this plays out. We have no idea. Like, we have no idea if Congress will get involved, or like, I can only imagine the insanity that would get involved if they start cutting teams out of the stuff like the Mississippi States or the Vanderbilts or whatever, and the people on the congressional floor going nuts and calling meetings and subpoenaing people and stuff. So we'll see what happens. I just think you can't worry about that right now. You got to win and build up something good and then go from there. Off topic, is it true that the Indiana Hoosiers missed out on Kyrie Irving because Tom Crean took a massive dump at Kyrie Irving's house during his in-home? I have never heard that story. I've heard lots of weird Tom Crean stories from people, and even other and like recruits and all kinds of stuff. The next comment's even better. That and Tom Crean brought a globe with him. Oh my. Yeah, Tom Crean's quite a character. He's out there. How do we convince the basketball team that every ACC team is ranked in the top 25, so show up for a fight at the beginning of the game? Yeah, that's maybe that's what Damon was doing when he had his shrink, his basketball shrink at the games. He was like going to convince them that Virginia Tech or whoever was, I forget what game it was that he showed up for. It wasn't Virginia Tech. It was some other one. Or maybe it was Virginia Tech. That guy's going to convince them that every team's North Carolina or Duke. More serious question, do you think Damon Stoudemire needs to adapt game plans to opponents a bit differently? For instance, it seems like we've been trying to play everyone the same when clearly we need to play teams differently. Of course, that also takes buy-in defensively and offensively from everyone, so that may be the bigger issue. I think he's like trying to do I'm establishing my culture, this is what we are, this is what we do, and that's the mode he's in. He was kind of slow to – he's adjusting from being in the NBA too, and that's the other point I would make with Damon. And when you hire a guy like that, there's going to be an adjustment period. You could go hire Greg Popovich tomorrow, who's considered like one of the greatest coaches of all time, and he would have an adjustment to coaching in college, I think, that you would have to see how it plays out. So I think that hopefully he's learning, taking notes in all this. He seems like a sharp dude. Certainly knows hoops really well. I think, he's talked to me about like learning the ACC and how teams are and stuff as they go through the schedule and seeing them in person and reacting to that. I think he's looked at this as sort of an educational year. And that was the way that I kind of expected them to look at this season, is like, and that's why I kept trying to calm everybody down after they beat Mississippi State and Carolina. It was like, the team can play well at times, but they are missing really key pieces like a true center. Like if you just threw James Banks in the middle of this team, it's the same problem they had last year. Like if you just have a true center that can rebound, block shots, that changes the dynamics of things. Because if you had that and Ndongo blocking shots and Tafari Gapari giving you length, then that changes the whole equation a little bit. And you would probably have to change how you play a little bit as well, because they can't shoot outside. So it'll be interesting to see how that all goes. Do you expect a lot of offense in the spring game? How much of the defense do you expect to be installed in the spring? I assume that they'll install most of the defense that they can, or the core principles of it, but they're not going to show you anything in the spring game because they're going to save everything because they got to play Florida State week 1. In terms of offense in the spring, I assume that it'll be all installed. Right now, you're only looking at a handful of replacement starters. You got Big Red on the offensive line, and then maybe a tight end here or a receiver there. All right, we'll try this with the old school cam because apparently the other one's not working very well. Are you hearing anything about other P5 head coaches possibly taking NFL jobs? No. But again, I was on vacation last week, and I tend to worry about what's in my silo and less about what's going on in other places. How much of an impact with Mustaf and Sutton next year? What are good ex-tech comps for them? I don't know. I haven't watched enough of those two guys. I was going to get into that after the season. I would like to go see them play, actually. I'm trying to figure that out. But I don't know. Mustaf's kind of hard to compare. He's so big. Is it Sean Livingston? I don't know what like the comparison is there with him. It's kind of a different size dude. Yeah, the camera I've had for a while, I've been using it. Apparently, I'm having like some Wi-Fi issues in my house because I'm getting that sign and then the thing's crashing. So I'm guessing that's what's going on. So let's see. Anything else, folks? I appreciate it. We're obviously having a little bit of technical crapola, so I don't want to keep pressing my luck here with whatever's going on. Maybe my wife's upstairs streaming a show or something. I don't know. It's weird. I'm having Wi-Fi issues or cam issues or whatever. But I want to thank everyone for joining me. Sorry I didn't do one last week. I went on vacation for much of last week. I flew from Atlanta to Houston to Vegas. I went to the Sphere to see U2, then I went to see David Copperfield with my wife. It was her birthday trip for her. Then I flew from Vegas to LA to meet up with my brother who was out there. Went to go see the G3 show at the Orpheum Theater, and there was a bunch of cool guitar players that came out. Yeah, I met Will Archer in the airport, which was very funny. It was very nice. I was happy to meet him. Always happy to meet all you guys. I ran into actually I saw some random tech fans in the Strip, which was very funny too. G3 show was amazing. It's Eric Johnson, Steve Vai, and Joe Satriani playing together. First time since '96. They had Nina Strauss and a guy named Jason Richardson come out and play the last couple songs with them. They did some jamming on some what did they play? Like Born to Be Wild and Foxy Lady or something like that. They played Crossroads. And I'm going down. So like some cool, lot of guitar heroics. I caught a pick from Steve Vai, which was always enjoyable to add to my pick collection. I have quite a few. I got picks from David Burnham from the Talking Heads from like 2002. I got to meet him. Robert Cray. I got like 5 from Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. Satriani, Eric Johnson picks. So yeah, I have a good little collection going of guitar picks. So that was great. Then stayed up all night in LA and then flew 5:25 a.m. to Denver, and then from Denver to Louisville to go to the game. Covered the game on. Haven't been up for like 30 something straight hours, which with an hour or 2 of sleep on the plane, and then slept for like 12 straight hours in the hotel. So that was not a relaxing vacation, but it was fun. I had a good time with my wife in Vegas. It was the first time we'd been away from our toddler for more than 24 hours too. So kind of a test run for going to Ireland. Anyways, folks, appreciate y'all. As always, thank you for subscribing to Jackets Online. Thank you for providing the life that I get to lead, and love all of you as always, and we will see you next week.